So not only are libations at the most basic type, they're also cheap and easy, which is why another reason why they're the most popular sort of things. You might not be able to afford an animal, you might not be able to afford the time to do a full-fledged sacrifice, but you can afford the time to pour out a little drink. And very frequently they would pour them out before they drank their own. The Greeks did that. So that way you've got a drink here, and do a little doing a saying of grace, you pour out a little bit for Zeus, and go on with it. Of the various cults, the domestic cult is primary. Now, I told you that rituals are most likely for one person or for a family. So, really, any ritual would tend to be domestic. But things we think of as the most domestic cults would be like dealing with the Hearth goddess, or dealing with patrons of a particular person. Those would be far more important than dealing with the pantheon as a whole. People would do rituals to those daily, probably. In Rome, they do them every meal. They throw a bit in fire for a Vesta every meal. Whereas you might do a sacrifice a couple times a year, if you're not one of the rich people or the upper classes. Proto-Europeans were patriarchal. So the head of the family, the pater, which is where we get father from, the pater would be the priest for the ancestors, and the mater, mother, would be the priestess for the hearth goddess. She was doing the cooking. Interestingly enough, in modern India, technically the father or the husband is supposed to do all the offerings to the fire, Agni, but almost always it's the mother doing it because she's doing the cooking and the father's too busy, or she let her take care of it. So, go on to deities. What are deities like? The most important thing is they're unmortos, which means not dying. They're immortal. But interestingly enough, they're only potentially immortal. They require a sacred drink and or food, that we'll be talking about tomorrow. If they consume this, then they can be immortal. Like in the Norse myths, when giant Thiazi stole Idun and her apples of immortality, the gods started to grow old, so they had to go get the apples back. But if we were to eat those apples or drink the sacred drink, either we would die because it's not right for us, or depending on mythology, we would live a long, happy life, but we wouldn't be immortal. We would just, in the Vedic ones, the prayers are always, may I live 100 summers. So that means you live to be 100, and you've lived you're essentially immortal for a human being. In general, male deities reflect being and doing, and female deities reflect being. This is just a rough general rule, but the upshot of this is that we know a heck of a lot more about the male deities than we do about the female deities, because female deities were very frequently connected with the land. When you move from this place to this place, you leave this land's deities behind, and now you suck up to this land's deities. So you don't even remember this one. You might take the same name with you, but you don't take the same deity per se with you. But being a warrior here, being a warrior here is the same thing. So you're going to take your warrior deities with you, which is annoying because it means we can't reconstruct the goddesses as strongly as possible. There are some chassos connected with the dawn, and the dawn's everywhere, so we can reconstruct her. She's the second most reconstructible Proto-Indo-European deity we have. But in general, we have difficulties reconstructing the goddesses. One of the terms we do have we can reconstruct for the deities is doteres westwon, which means givers of goods. Just gives you an idea of what the Proto-Indo-Europeans expected from the gods, that we would give them good things and they would give us good things. We can reconstruct a few myths, the most important of which is the dragon slaying myth, and I'll get to that later when I talk about one of the deities. We can reconstruct a few more in less detail. It's amazing we can reconstruct any at all. When you figure what little we know about the Gaulish mythology, for instance, it's amazing that we can reconstruct something from thousands of years before then. So let me talk about some of the deities. If some of you may have read my book, Deep Ancestors, and I talk about deities in there. There are a few more that I've worked out since then, or encountered since then. Also, on my website, I have a whole section on Proto-Indo-European, and I do cover the deities there in great depth. But I don't include these ones either, so you guys are getting to hear these for the second time as one of the person who talked about it. So I'm going to start with those ones. These are ones that there isn't as much evidence for. We aren't as 100% certain about compared to the other ones, but they're very interesting. They're very useful. They help flesh out the pantheon. So those who want to work in this system would find them useful, even though we can't be sure. The first one I mentioned is Urbantia. Urbantia. It's the source of the name greed. She also appears in India as a title for the goddess Ushas. So we only have more. Good thing I haven't bought one. So that's one of the reasons that we can't be sure that we've only got it in two of the families, but they're very far apart from each other, and they're both very archaic. So that works out kind of well. So. Yeah. And let me just write this underneath it. Proto-Indo-European. And if you see it, if you looked it up in some linguistic thing, instead of YA, you'd have this I with a little D and then an H. Proto-Indo-European literally means the higher, the exalted one. She would probably have been a goddess of poets and a goddess of inspiration. In my Proto-Indo-European rituals, we invoke her as our for inspiration at the beginning of our rituals. Second one, Priya. I'm not really sure whether this ends like that or that. I forget which. Oh, you'll also find a number down here. I think it's a 2. Priya literally means the dear one. It's where the goddess named Frigga comes from. And in India, the goddess Ushas, the goddess of the dawn, is called the Priya Diva, which means the dear one of Zeus. So that's another possible deity. I haven't worked. The only ones of these new ones I've worked with is Proto-Indo-European. Third one here. Willenos. Anytime you see a W, by the way, it's going to be a U with a little arc under it if you run across the sign. Literally god of perception, related to Varuna, the Gaulish prophetess named Velida, and the word Fili, the Irish Fili, related to that. So the god of perception, god of poetry, divination, possibly oaths. Velenos means coverer. Woden, Uranus, and Varuna possibilities. Probably god of the dark sky, not the cloudy sky, but the night sky. And the last of the new ones, Wetos. Wetos, and you can see what a mess some of these are. Yeah. When you start looking at them, the way the linguists spell them, it just really gets way out of hand. That's why in all my stuff on it, I write them the way they're pronounced, because I'm not writing for linguists, I'm writing for people who are going to try to use these things. It makes it difficult for people to check my sources, but I have to make decisions. That means the winds. I'm sorry, no. Yeah, Wetos, the winds. They're wind gods, or usually plural, all through the Indo-European world. It's possible that this wasn't a Proto-Indo-European deity. Just there's so many wind gods throughout the world. This could have been invented later on, and the word basically means winds. So the name could have been applied to them everywhere. So that's another sure. but what the heck? This is the plural form. If you were dealing with just one god, there wouldn't be a long one there. So we with those. So I'm guessing they would have been worshipped together, but there are descendant traditions like among the Vedics where there's a singular god Vala. So that, and Mata as well. So that might be a possibility. So those are the newer ones. I don't have them written anywhere yet because I haven't decided what to do with them or not. So I haven't worked personally with any of them except for Proto-Indo-European. She seems to be pretty cool out there. The main god and the deity that we are most able to reconstruct for all Proto-Indo-European deities is Ceisiwr. It just means shining sky flower. Jupiter, obviously, is Pater, the Vedic god Yalspatar, Norse god, the Germanic god Tivas, they all come from that. So the god Tyr originally was a more important god. Odin's a much later interloper. Possibly was even a Celtic deity first, which I think would be hysterical to tell all the purists.
Can I see that again? I'm trying to get my 20 characters in right. It's the E's this time.
It's under the E.
Okay.
Yeah. That just changes. Again, it tells you that sometimes it serves as a vowel I, and sometimes it serves as a Y, depending on what goes on around it. Like the word for God is related to the word Deus and the Deus, because in that case it's operating as a vowel. But I just go ahead and write them as how I'm going to pronounce them. He's the main god, and he'd be the Lord of the Chatos. He makes sure the Chatos is enforced. He does not create the Chatos, he's actually compelled by the Chatos. None of these gods control the entire universe. They all operate within the universe. We're created with the universe, and if the universe ever dies, they go away too. They're not all powerful, and none of them are creators. Although they might be constructors, starting with basic material and putting that together. Second god. This god actually is one of my gross patrons, Chayame. Chayame. He's you call him the god of usness. The Chay part is related to the word Aryan. It's related to words for meaning free and noble, and our group. That's why I call him the god of usness. He's the god of the Deities, the god of social order. We have a song that we sing for him in our rituals. It's always Chaim and Deities, which means Chaim and Lord of the One of the People. It's one of a few songs I've actually written that's in Proto-Indo-European. It's more of a chant than a song. I'm not saying somewhere corner me sometime. I'll give you a look at it. Related to the Vedic Ayman, Gaulish Aymanus, Anglo-Saxon Irman, Irish Araman. So he's a god of social justice. He's also a god of healing, because you're supposed to be healthy. So healthy is according to order. So the god of order, of social order, is also a god of healing. The Dwalsinu, these are the twins. They're some of my favorite days. In fact, at our equinox ritual next weekend, it's going to be directed towards them and one other day. Gotta make sure I get the accents right. The Dwalsinu, which really means the sons of God, and by God is meant Ceisiwr here. In Greece, the equivalents are Castor and Pollux, which are called the Dioskoroi, which I think is funny. It means Zeus's boys. That they are the gods nearest to people. They are saviors. They're particularly good for people at sea. They like to save drowning sailors. They are connected with cavalry. they'd be excellent gods for members of the military. If you're in the Air Force, they'd be connected with flying. They're good for naval things. If you're a member of the Army branch, they'd be great for that because they're cavalry. But they're also good for other everyday, I'm in trouble sort of things. This actually causes them troubles in. They're very closely connected with horses, and in India, the god is the Ashwin, the Nasatyas, which the Ashwin means horsemen. They originally were excluded from the greatest rituals because they were too close to people. They walked among people, they healed sick things, so they were considered impure. So they weren't admitted to the higher rituals at first. So they're so close. The Duosinu are so close to people; they're almost people.
What does the name mean again?
It means sons of God. And literally, God literally just meant Jesus Pater. The Dewos is the same root as Deos, as I mentioned earlier, that means God. Yemos and Manos, I'll put in these ones down. Yemos is a god, Manos is a man. His name means man. Yemos means twin. Yemos and Manos are twins. They are part of the creation myth, where Manos is the first man, he's also the first priest, conducts the first sacrifice, and the first sacrificial victim is Yemos. From Yemos' body, he creates the universe, the skull to the sky, the blood to the waters, and the bones to the stones, and so on. So that our entire universe is the body of Yemos. And it's possible that in Proto-Indo-European eschatology, at the end of the world, Yemos gets put back together, the universe gets dissolved back into him. Because he's the first to die, he becomes the god of the land of the dead. Not the god of death, but the god of the land of the dead, because he was the first one to get there. So he put down his stake. He's a good god. You might not want to hang out with him because he hangs out with death, but he would be a god to pray to, possibly not for not dying. I wrote a prayer for death, which tells death to come back another day, and it says, for you as a god, for you will be only a moment, for us it will be a lifetime. So Yemos would be that kind of god. The beautiful irony here is that Manos kills Yemos, and because Yemos is killed, he becomes god. Because Manos isn't killed, he eventually has to die. So Yemos gets the better side of things here by allowing himself to be killed. He actually ends up dying. Chapon Nepots. In my book, and it used to be on my website, I spelled this Chapon Nebot, but I've recently decided that Chapon Nepots is more accurate. That was in premise with the critical marks on this one. Literally, it means, it could also be called Neptunus. Literally means Neptune of the waters. I have to say Neptune because we don't have a word in English.
Do you want me to ask if they have an easel?
Yeah. So our word nephew comes from this, actually. What it literally means is your closest male relative or your closest female relative. So your daughter's son is a nepot, and your sister's son is a nepot. Because your daughter and your sister are the closest female relative to you, and their sons are the closest male relative to them. So the word nepot meant both grandson and nephew, but only in a particular line. So there's close relation of waters. He's the god of fire and water, or water is living and pure. Earlier I mentioned how originally Proto-European was an ergative language with animate and inanimate words. Some of those have survived. Actually, the two that have survived are the words for fire and for water. The animate form of fire is luminous, and the word for inanimate word for fire is pachar. And the inanimate word for water is udans, which is where we get our word water from. I'm sorry, no, water. Udans is the genitive. Water. And the animate word for it is hakwa, which is where we get Habak, which is where we get our word. Well, aqua comes from that. Chapon is the water, Nepot is the Nepot. He's the god of fire and water, so he's connected with the mystery of the sacred drink. I'll be talking about him some more tomorrow. He's connected with horses as well. Probably that's the idea of waves being horses, but that's kind of an odd connection. The next one, you've heard quite a lot about one of his descendants, and it might be a little surprise. This guy is. It's Pachoson. I think I'll give you a Pachoson, EH2, it's the Pachoson Pan. In India, it's Pushan, god of herds, god of merchants. And I think Kernonis actually is a descendant from him as well, although under a different name. It definitely has the same ideas. God of go-betweens. So he's a god of travel, god of merchants, anything that transfers something from one thing to another. People think of Pan as god of the wild, but he wasn't god of the wild. He was god of meadows, god of the where you send your sheep and your goats out to, which is between civilization and the wild. So he wasn't a god of the wild; he's a god of the ambivalence, actually. And so that's why he's a god of in-betweens. So he's a good god to invoke before trips. In our Proto-Indo-European rituals, we use him as our gatekeeper. Menos. Menos. Literally, that means measurer. And he is the god of the moon. The Proto-Indo-European deity of the moon is Man. He is a measurer, just like the moon measures the sky. The night sky, it also measures the month. If you want to use a particular deity, mathematicians would like him. Any sort of thing having to do with measurement would be appropriate. Obviously, he might be a good god for astronomers. When I see the moon, I say a little prayer to him. It's Menos Mechatu Me, which means Menos measure me according to the Chatus. And it's just rather a cool idea that you've done. Me means me, so you could say measurer, measure me, and you Menos me, Chatu me, which is kind of a cool construction. So measure me according to the Chatus, like, so may I do what the Chatus does, and if I screw up, well, whack me a little bit and keep me on the path. Okay, let's deal with some goddesses here. I told you earlier they're not as easily reconstructed. In some cases, we can reconstruct functions more easily than we can reconstruct names. We love this special character. A whole new one. Actually, two new ones. This is Ekwana. It looks like a question mark without a dot. It's a glottal stop. Ekwana. Yeah.
Is this even in the character map?
It's in the area one. Word.
Okay.
It might be an IPA extension.
And is there like an accent on that K?
Yes, there's an accent on the K.
And that's a line over the A.
Yes. Ekwana. Sorry about that. The theory is that all Proto-Indo-European words started with consonants. Therefore, something that looks like it starts with a vowel actually starts with a glottal stop. And that may seem weird to you, except that in English the same thing is true. Believe it or not, every time you start a word with a vowel, you're actually starting with a glottal stop. Like, off with her head, off with her head. There's actually, you can hear that, off with her head. But when you say off with her head, it actually is a glottal stop there. It's a very slight one. But we do it in English too. You just have to learn how to emphasize it, and then you can do the Proto-Indo-European. The K with the accent over it, sometimes you see it with a circumflex as well. That just means it's palatalized. It's kind of like with a Y after it. So Ekwana, not Ekwana, Ekwana. It literally means horse goddess. opponent comes from it. She's obviously has to do with horses, but she has more to do with than horses. In Indo-European thought, horses are horses are male and cows are female. Just like a lot of people think of cats as female and dogs as male. You know, in any sort of, like you've got cats and you've got, I'm not quite sure what the female version of cat is, but you've got, well, among cows, you've got cows and you've got bulls. But we call all of them, when we think of the group, we think of them all as cows. So horses were male. Well, that means a female horse, it kind of breaks the rules. So she becomes a little bit of an outsider. And in her case, she becomes a goddess of unrestrained sexuality. Sexuality in service not of society, but of the individual. But she also does have a role in function of society. She's a goddess of sovereignty. The king has to be married to the horse goddess in order to be king. So she's a goddess of very great power, but also very dangerous. I like to call her the bitch goddess, and in both senses of the word, because she would also be connected with dogs. The good one, however, this one isn't quite as bad.
I couldn't write that. I couldn't even write that word. I couldn't find. Was it the glottal stuff?
Yeah. If you want, if you just keep track of it yourself, you can just use a question mark.
K-W-I-A.
And this one, Gwawinda. Gwawinda means provider of cows. There's a superscript W there.
W.
Yeah, superscript W. The reason why it's superscript is, in English, when I was learning how to read, I was taught that a QU was pronounced like a KW.
Is that I-N-O-L-A?
I-N-D-A. Gwawinda. There probably should be a long mark with the A as well. Gwawinda.
All right. I know how to make a superscript. All right. I'm good on that.
But anyways, you were probably taught that a QU is pronounced like a K followed by a W, but that's not true. It's actually one sound. It's cool. You go cut, and your lips are like this, but round your lips, quote, make the same sound, quote. That's what a QU actually is. Well, gwa is just the voiced version of that. We don't have the sound in English, but it's easy to make gwa. So Gwawinda, gwa means cow. The goddess Boan, usually you will see it as a white cow, but I've convincingly argued, at least to me, that it actually comes from this root. So that she wasn't the white cow, she was the provider of cows. It's also the name of a title of one of the deities in India. Probably not actually used as a term, as a name in Proto-Indo-European times, but the goddess existed. They just were called by something different. If I had to come up with a name to call her, this could have been a title of hers. It's certainly, if I were back in Proto-Indo-European days and said the goddess Gwawinda, they'd know exactly what I was talking about, even if I had got the name wrong. She's a goddess of general prosperity, motherhood, sexuality under control. Akwona might be a good goddess if you want to have sex for fun. Gwawinda would be a better goddess if you wanted to have babies. So she's just a more friendly, nicer goddess because she's a cow equals female. So she's the most female of the female. Chassos. I like Chassos. She's the other deity we're going to be honoring next weekend. Appropriately enough, because she's the goddess of the dawn. And let me write this one in here as well. Chassos. It's from the root which means to rise. So she's the riser. Interesting little tidbit for those of you who are interested in interesting little tidbits. This is actually a neuter noun. It's a neuter S stem noun. the word Venus doesn't come from this at all, but Venus is actually a new noun as well. That's why it's in the U.S. and it's a goddess. It actually was Waynos originally, and it got changed to unit, which made me feel a lot better when I learned that. So she's her Eos, those of the deities are related from her. She's closely related to the Dehosanu. She may be their sister, or she may be their wife, both of their wives, or she may be both. She overlaps with another goddess, which I'll talk about next. So she, anyways, because she's a neuter S now, she probably would have been originally just an abstraction, the concept of dawn, and that there was a deified. This one has a new symbol in it, but this one everybody will see before. Sawel Yoshil Twitter. Yeah, at first these names are kind of scary, but you get used to them. They're no scarier than Old Irish, I can tell you. We've got a schwa here.
All right. S-A-W-E with an accent, Y-O.
Oh, it should be Saw. It should be an elder. Sawel Yoshil Twitter literally means daughter of the sun. The sun goddess, the sun deity is female.
What is it? Is that character? Yeah, what's that?
It's schwa.
It's a schwa.
Upside down E.
Oh, okay.
It's just pronounced up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an unstressed mid vowel. For those who are interested, such the sun actually is considered to be the eye of Jupiter. She's the Salios Dukater. She's the daughter of the sun, in this case, being the daughter of Jupiter. She overlaps with Chassos to a large extent. She's not really that big a member of cult, but she does show from time to time. The Greek Helen of Troy, comes from this deity. She was originally a goddess. Even in historical times, she was worshipped as Sepharda, for instance. So she is, again, either the sister or the lover or wife of the twins of the Dehosanu. Doesn't really have a huge role to play in cult. I guess you could pray to her anything having to do with sun or with dawn. Now let's get a fairly normal one. This one name I made up because we don't have her name. We just have her function. And I thought I'd pick one that made sense to me. West Goth, Hearth goddess. She of the household. That's what it means. This actual term, the West, is related to, literally means to spend the night. So related, or there's a very similar root meaning to burn. So it was a nice one to pick. Westa, the Roman Westa, it comes from this root. Hestia, possibly. She's the hearth goddess. Everything you'd expect of a hearth goddess. Goddess of the home. Goddess of nice things. She might be, she's the altar fire of the house. Offerings in the house would be on Westia. She might show up in public rituals, but in public rituals there were two fires. One was round and was the hearth, and one was square and was the altar fire. So you would light you would light the round fire first, either lighting it there or bringing fire from the house and lighting it in the ritual space. And then you would use fire from that fire to light the altar fire. And in our grow rituals at the end, when we're extinguishing the fire, we take some burning coals from our altar fire and put them into our hearth fire. And we say the true altar of the people is the hearth. And then we extinguish the main fire, then we offer to the hearth goddess on the hearth fire, and then we extinguish that one. So the fire gets extended from the hearth to the altar, and at the end from the altar back to the hearth. And then we can finish this out. For our hearth, we have cauldron filled with sand, and we use the incense briquettes on that, and then we use one of them to light our main fire from. We light our hearth fire at our processional site, and then we process with the fire into the site. Brita, obviously, is a descendant of hers. Vesta has we don't run across her in the Indo-Iranian area. There, the deities become masculine. That's probably because the word provided for the animate form of fire is a masculine noun, becomes Agni. Agni just literally means fire.
So what's interesting, you said breed is partially derived from her, but then breed's also derived from
Yes.
So
Fairly common for deities to split up and join together, and be changed from other ones. The goddess Aphrodite originally came from Astarte. She was originally a Near Eastern deity, and the Phoenician form of her was Asteresh, and the Greeks couldn't pronounce Asteresh, so they pronounced it Aphrodite, and then by folk etymology became Aphrodite. So Aphrodite is goddess of sexuality and beauty and stuff like that. Astarte is not. So that the deity actually changed along with the name change. So that's
interesting.
How that happened. It happened in Vedic myths. You find Apam is identified, is used as title for Agni, but actually is a deity on his own. You find it all the time.
That's fascinating.
Donu, probably for descendants of her. Donu. All the Twathajid Danan comes from that root. If you're familiar with the geography of Russia, you'll run across the Dnieper, the Dniester, and everyone's heard of the Danube. They all come from that. From a root that means to flow. Possibly was originally a non-Proto-Indo-European goddess, because she was a goddess of place, and they kept the name as they went to other places, but it would apply to the local river. In some places, she becomes an earth goddess as well. So she'd be a good goddess for worshiping your local river. When I lived in New York and Massachusetts, I used to work with Donu Quinnipiac. Quinnipiac is the Wampanoag name for the Charles River, which is the major river in that area. So I just called it Donu Quinnipiac. So you could use that name for your local river goddess, or you could add a title to it to mean the local one. Like the Catholics do with the saints, Francis of this, Catherine of this. So that's another possibility. River goddesses are generally fertility goddesses. They can also be connected with sovereignty. They can be connected with the earth. Basically, anything works in with the water. Kolios. I can't remember who she is related to. Literally means the coverer. She's the goddess of death. Now, I said Yemos is the goddess of the land of the dead. Kolios is the goddess of death itself. So you definitely want to keep Kolios away from you. So she's not a deity that's really an object of cult, unless you do a take this and go away kind of offering. Sacrifices are generally shared meals. You kill the animals, the gods get to eat part of it, and people ate the rest. I call it a sacred barbecue. If you made an offering to Kolios, you wouldn't eat it. You don't want a close relationship with death. By the way, you may know that they burned the bones and the fat for the gods and a few small pieces of other things, and then ate almost all the meat. And it sometimes it's put across as the gods getting cheated out of good stuff, but the gods knew what they were doing, because bones and fat burns, and meat doesn't burn as well. So they actually got the stuff they wanted. They got the stuff that burned. So that's just sort of a fun thing. It looks the first like they're being cheated, but they know better. This one you'll run across some descendants of her. She is Dekyon Mater. Dekyon. If you think of the words pit and pot, those are actually different sounds. The P's are actually different sounds. We just think of them as the same. Pit is aspirated as a pop after it. Pit and stop. It doesn't have that after it. So Dekyon Mater. This should be a issue. Yeah, that is an accent on the G. Dekyon Mater. Literally Earth Mother. The word human comes from this. Linguistically speaking, people are earthlings. The word human comes from this. Humus. lots of words like that. The word chronic actually comes from the Greek word chronos. The DH becomes a CH, and the GH becomes a TH. Chronos comes from that as well. Your basic Earth mother figure, there's nothing really unusual about her. Okay, those are the deities that I've been able to reconstruct, or that other people have reconstructed for me. I haven't really done. I've done a lot of work on reconstructing what these deities are more alike, but I haven't done any actual reconstruction of names because I'm not a linguist, and I don't think you should practice linguistics without a license. So, especially etymology. A lot of bad etymologies out there. Here's a rule, by the way: if you're looking at etymology of a word or a phrase, the more clever it sounds, the least likely it is to be true. That is a hard and fast rule. So I avoid that like the plague. So since we're good ADFers, let's talk about the kindreds. And the Proto-Indo-Europeans definitely did deal with what we call the kindreds. So let's look at the ancestors first. And I've wrote a couple things on here before I bring it up. Don't make me go fancy here and just throw some into European Proto-European. This is actually a different organization than is in my book, something I've been working on lately. One thing I've been doing lately is I've been going through all my old Proto-Indo-European notes and new books I read, and I've been creating an expanded version of Deep Ancestors, which is not going to see print because right now it's twice as long as the original one. So I'm just throwing in everything I got. But while I do that, I'm making changes. If you go to my website, you'll see the changes. The sections from my book that are on the website that are changed, I've made changes on the website. So the deities, you'll see a lot more evidence, a lot more expanded ideas, things like that. And the ritual has a fairly in-depth commentary on it, so I highly recommend that. So, the dead, the Murtos, here, another dot under an R there, literally means dead. Well, the ones who have died, that's literally what it means. I believe there are three, no big surprise, three different categories of the dead that the Indo-Europeans honored. They didn't just honor the dead. Oh, I didn't bring my cooler factor. The first category I'm having here is the Pateras Materas Quae. Quae just means and. You slap it on the end of a word, it means and before that word. Those of you who study Latin, they use Quae the same way. That means the fathers and the mothers. The Proto-Indo-Europeans probably would have just talked about the Pateras, but we're a little more non-sexist than they were. So these would be your genetic deities. In Vedic ritual, for instance, you honor in a ritual, a man would honor his father, his grandfather, and his great-grandfather. Those would be his Pateras. In Rome, a lot of the older graves had tubes in them. You could pour libations into them down into the tomb. And that would be an offering to the Pateras and the Materas. The second category, Wikipotes. In my book, I used Wikipotes as the name for the dead in general. Literally means masters of the household. So I'm applying that to the idea of chieftains. We can see this in India. There were offerings to the rishis, or the great poets of ancient times. And in Greece, there were the heroes and the heroines. So these aren't just dead people that you're necessarily related to. They're dead people that did something really big for your society in some way. I've talked in my number of works about the difference between genetic ancestors and cultural ancestors. So like, the example I use the most is George Washington. He had no biological descendants, but he's still an ancestor because he was important in forming our society. Well, he'd be a pop there under this system. The cult's different. You honor the Pateras differently than you honor the Potes. In fact, with Potes sometimes actually become almost deities. That happens in India and in Greece. If you read a lot of Greek stuff, you'll read that the offerings to the celestial deities were on raised altars, and the ones to the the heroes were the dead were in pits, but there are plenty of temples to heroes that actually have raised altars. And so that's not really a hard and fast rule. So they become gods almost, even though they were originally people. In the Norse, you'll see that with the heroes in the burial mounds, where they get almost worshipped. They become deities. And finally, the Murta. That's a collective neuter plural. Meaning the dead is all one big clump. In Rome, there was the festival of Parentalia, where you honored your genetic ancestors, and then there was Lemuria, where you honored the dead. And the dead are nowhere near as nicely intended towards you as the Pateras would be. Again, in India is always a go-to because it provides so much information. You have in the rituals, besides the square and circular altar I mentioned earlier, there's a semicircular altar to the dead. And when that goes in south, and when you make your sacred space, you're supposed to make that slope a little bit down in south, so that when you make offerings to the dead, they flow outside of your space. So that way the dead don't come into your space to get their stuff. It's a way of keeping them separate. So there the dead is a big group. They're more propitiated than they are offered to. You want to be nice to them, and you want them not to hurt you, but you wouldn't call to them for help. So in India, we have all three of those very clearly. We've got the householder honoring his father, his grandfather, and his great-grandfather. We've got people honoring the Rishis, and we have people honoring the dead as a whole in their rituals. So I would see there as being three different kinds of ancestors for the Proto-Indo-Europeans. This is something that's becoming more clear to me as I'm working on my revision to deep ancestors. If I ever come up with a second edition, it'll be one of the changes I will make. It will be actually going there. I'll leave these ones up for now, and I'll write the next category.
What's the word above Murta?
Which quote it is? W-I-K with an accent.
W-I-K with an accent.
Oh, yeah, that's a K. Yeah, and it's like P-O-T-E-S. The potes, I believe it's related to word possible. Literally, potes is one who has the power. So let me just write one more on here. One more of Hindu's on here. These are the Khansus. Actually, put it in plural. The Khansus. Khansus literally just meant a numinous being. So even deities could be called Khansus. There isn't a Proto-Indo-European word that means this, so I chose this one to use it. I use it for the land spirits. Almost certainly the Proto-Indo-Europeans would honor the land spirits, but who those were, we can't really tell, because when they moved from place A to place B, they honored the land spirits of place B rather than the land spirits of place A. And if they move into a new place, they're going to honor the land spirits of the people who were living there before them, or now living among them. Actually, people think of the Indo-European as these great thundering horsemen coming out of the east, killing everybody and taking over. There were actually small groups that came in and became dominant, and so people there became like them. It's like Latin takes over in France. Instead of Gauls died out, and Latin becomes French. It wasn't that the Romans came in and killed off all the Gauls. It's just that their culture was seen as higher culture, so the Gauls started adopting it. So the people who lived in the area would still be there. They'd still be honoring their local land spirits. And the Indo-Europeans would say, oh, okay, I honor them as well. And these actually are very important. In Greece, for instance, the average person would be honoring the local nymphs more than they'd be honoring the Olympians. The Olympians are far away. They're more associated to this temple or to the city. Like Athena was the goddess of the city. but you might be more inclined to honor the goddess of this particular well nearby you, because she relates to you more. It's almost like in Catholicism, you pray to the saints rather than you pray to God, because God's busy. So the Hansus would actually have been very important. We don't know much about them, but we do know a lot about their descendants. We know a lot about the Dryads and the nymphs, without necessarily knowing what the Proto-Indo-European deities of trees and water were like. Could they have been like these descendants? Possibly, but there's a lot of variation among them. The Slavic land spirits are generally not nice, and you just want to propitiate them. In general, Slavic religion is really depressing. There's not much evidence for it in English. If you wanted to really study Slavic, you got to learn Russian, which I ain't gonna do. Having enough troubles with French and German. But what I read of it is actually a very depressing religion. So their land spirits were the kind that you would get you lost in the woods and would drown you in the rivers and stuff like that. Whereas the Greek ones were a little nicer, but you still have to be careful. You don't want to cut down trees willy-nilly or they'll come after you.
Kill you and eat you?
Yes.
Basically, kill you and eat you land spirits.
Yes. Land spirits they're not human. They're outsiders in a sense. So you want to be nice to them, you want to be careful with them. You might want to invite them into your life if you're going to continue to be really nice to them, but other than that, just be nice to them outside. My wife gets upset when there are bugs in the house, not because she doesn't like bugs so much, but because she has to deal with nature. It stays outside and she stays inside. So that's kind of what the deal is with the nature spirits. There are, of course, oh God, I left out Kakunos. How could I have left out Kakunos? He's not even on my list. Kakunos, I have to mention him. Literally means either the striker or the oak god. I've been giving everybody else's names here. Related to the same root as percussion.
I'm pretty good. I've been pretty good at that.
Here we are. Perkunos, from the root per, meaning to strike, or possibly the same root as the Latin quequus, like Albuquerque, meaning oak tree. There's a connection there that oak trees are struck more often than other trees. And I actually read an article on it where someone said, all the folklore says that oak trees are struck more often than other trees. I wonder if that's true. It's a pretty in-depth study, and by God they are, which I think is really quite cool that someone did the work. Like all these things you just assume everybody, and then one day someone goes, wait a minute. He's the god of thunder, he's the god of the stormy skies, he's the tyrannous figure. Back to the ergative phase, I believe that Deus Pater and Perkunos were linked together, and then there was the god of the bright sky, the god of the dark sky. Perkunos is very strongly linked with agriculture, because you need rain. Like if you look at Thor, for instance, he's very popular among farmers. Indra is connected strongly with Mars. I'm a firm believer that Mars was originally a thunder god, and he's very strongly related with agriculture as well. So you'll see all the speculation. Why was Mars connected with agriculture? To me, it's friggin' obvious. I've got to find out if someone actually has made that connection before me. I can't imagine no one has. So I mentioned earlier.
With Mars, there's also, I can't remember exactly where it's from or how it's phrased, but something about the blood of war will cause the fields to grow.
Oh. Cool.
Also for defending the fields.
Yes, that's what I've seen as the explanation, but I think there's much more to it than that. I think it's just obvious that Indra is connected with Lu is connected with growth. Lu being a lightning god rather than a sun god. The Dada, though, is also a thunder god. The myth that we have of him is the myth of the dragon slaying. The dragon or the serpent was the big bad guy in European thought. It goes all the way to the Middle Ages with the dragon guarding the gold. He's bad because gold is supposed to be spread around to keep society going, the giver the Lord gives gold to his retainers, and his retainers give services back in return. But the gold, the dragon just hoards it all. It doesn't keep it moving. So he's really breaking the rules. So it goes all the way to medieval times. In Proto-Indo-European times, it was more that he's in the Virthra, the encircler, the constrainer, where he prevents the wolves from growing, holds the waters back, and he has to be killed. And when he's killed, the waters / milk / women / gold gets released, and the world can continue to grow. So his myth is fairly well reconstructed. I fought for years the idea of the Delta being a thunder deity, but then someone pointed out to me the Dinhenicus of Motherhood, where the waters rise up and threaten and drown the land, and the Delta has to swim down to the bottom of it, and there's a monster down there, and the word is difficult to translate, and Gwyn translated said it probably was a squid. Which is good because the serpent generally has a bunch of heads or a bunch of arms, something like that. It's a squid, very appropriate. And he has to kill it with what Gwyn translates as his mace of wrath. So I thought I'd do some research on that name, pulled up the dictionary of the Irish language, and it turns out the word for mace of wrath could also be translated as thunderclap, which to me seems such an obvious, better than mace of wrath. So he's a reflex of the same idea. Obviously, Thor, the big god serpent, and Indra and Virthra. And on the Gunnar strip cauldron, there's the panel that's got the god holding the wheel and the man holding on to it, and then there's the snake across the bottom. I believe that to be a representation of the same myth. In fact, in some versions of myth, the god is helped by a human. So in that one, it's even that particular variant of it. The human holding on to the third. Sorry? Third what?
That's the name of the
Yes, third. Yes, third. And sometimes the god himself is a third as well. He might have 3 heads, for instance. Sometimes the monster is 3. There was Hercules killed Gaion, who was a man made out of 3 men stuck together, essentially. And because of this particular myth, the outsiders are seen as either snakes or wolves. And the word for snakes, ogwis, that just means the serpents. That's global-stop OG with an accent on it. But WH-long-ES, ogwis. Believe me, you do get used to these things.
No, I'm just saying I need binoculars. You write so small.
Sorry. Ogwis. So they're the snakes, they're the outsiders. Wolves are outsiders because wolves are dangerous, obviously, but wolves are also ambiguous. They're just like dogs, only they're wild. So they break the rules. And dogs are a little bit ambiguous too because they're just like wolves, only tame. So a lot of times dogs end up in very negative situations. Proto-Indo-Europeans love them their order. That's generally a rule all around the world about things that don't fit the categories are somehow bad. And that's probably the reason why pork is forbidden by Jews because a proper meat animal chews the cud and has split hooves. And pigs don't do the cud, so therefore they don't fit the category. And horses don't have split hooves, so they don't fit the category. So it's really not a question of uncleanness; is impurity. It's breaking the rules, and that's what the snakes move without legs, and so that's breaking the rules. And they live in the ground, so they're connected with death. So there's very frequently the snake that lives around your house that you make offerings to. In the Balkans and the Baltic areas, snakes are seen as positive, and in Rome, snakes were seen as local land spirits that could be good as well. So sometimes snakes are good. So those are, that's my summary of Proto-Indo-European religion. As you can tell, there's a lot to fall into. like I said, it's something you have to know everything about every descendant tradition, and that's impossible. So I've just done my best over the last couple of decades. This is like the result of several decades of work, which is why I've been able to get so far, and obviously continuing to do this. Like I said, I've got a lot of information on my website, with a fair amount of references on there. I also have some videos on YouTube. So YouTube, one about the deities, one about books on Proto-Indo-European culture, recommended books. Another one called So You Want to Learn Proto-Indo-European, which is about the language. The language is a bitch. It's hard to find. There is no how to speak Proto-Indo-European book. There's one book that's yay thick, and it's in German about the verbs. It's not that hard because like it'll have the root and it'll have the definition of it. The definition might be 2 words long, so you can just pull out a dictionary and do that on learn German to know that particular use that particular word. There's one on nouns that isn't anything with near as useful, so it's hard to find things. And you have to like read 10 different books and then put things together. Over the years, I've created my own Proto-Indo-European dictionary, so I can translate things. I have a whole file of stuff like grammar that I've created for myself. It's what you have to do, unfortunately. But if you're interested in studying more, I recommend starting with my website and my YouTube, and of course my book. You gotta have my book.
Amazing book.
It is. Not as long as I would have liked it to be. I had to cut it a lot. Like I said, the version which I'm calling my director's cut is currently twice the size of the original. If I ended up doing a second edition, there'd be a lot of whacking back to do.
And the cut did not bring any books with them. I know the idea of store sells.
Oh, I got them. I got all my books. Well, 3 of my books with me. I didn't bring them here because my back was hurting. But I will probably I'll have them around. You can get them autographed too, which will make them extra special. Except it'll be harder to sell them on eBay because they'll be dedicated. So, is there any questions? Have I completely drowned you?
Oh, we just geeked out. It's great.
What is your website?
It's just Serith. When I set it up, I was shocked to discover that the domain name was still open. Yeah, and on YouTube, it's just Serith. So you just show up. All right, I want to end this with a short meditation. This is actually written in Proto-Indo-European, but it's a fairly simple one. When I was writing a 2 powers meditation in Proto-Indo-European, I worked with it for a while and decided to rewrite it and update it with what the language sees. And I realized one section of it could be taken out and just used as its own meditation. And I do this as part of my morning prayers. And the English is just I am here, I stand here. Here with the Chatos about me, the Chatos pours into me, the Chatos fills me, the Chatos nourishes me. May I live by the Chatos, may I live the Chatos, may I always live the Chatos. Because everything you do gets plowed back in. It's all drops from the tree into the water, which then feeds the tree again. So everything you do makes that branch a little bit different, move a little differently, and then things that grow from that are based on where you bent that little twig. So everything you do is based on what the Chatos was before you, but since you have freedom, you have limited freedom because I'm not going to fly because I'm a person. So I don't have complete freedom. But within being a person, I have a large amount of freedom. But then everything I do becomes part of my future context, and so on. Everything arises in context. So the words, I am here, ki esmi, I stand here, ki zestami, here with the Chatos b'almi, ki Chatos b'moy, and the Chatos pours into me, Chatos nikiltor. I use the root gil, meaning as to pray or to pour a libation or just to pour. So the Chatos pours into me as if it were giving me a libation. chatus mekutos, chatus nisachiti, chatus metadeti, which fills me, nourishes me. Chatu guemi, I live by the chatus. Chatum guemi, I live the chatus. Like I told you earlier that you change the endings of words to change the meanings to. So chatu meaning by is the direct object. Chatum smekuwayo means always live. Chatus. Now I am my present dolastu, which means so be it in Proto-Indo-European. So that's my centering prayer. Chatus esmi, chatus istami, chatu bemoy, chatu guemi, chatu guemis, chatum smekuwayo dolastu. That gives you an idea of what the language sounds like when it's spoken. I'll at least say the words of the chatum, so I can just hear how I feel for it. Chatum de despotes, sunesens und dotos, westesi, wed de nosam, humanosem, tebios, and gensuspendimus. So I think it's a very pretty language. There's some sounds in it we don't have. Took me quite a while to learn how a K with a superscript W was pronounced, and I was furious when I learned it. Because I already knew how to pronounce it. It just hadn't been explained to me. I was furious with my first grade teacher for telling me that it's pronounced wrong. Thank you for listening to this. I've been very disappointed in one thing about my deep ancestors, and that no one has asked me to explain the dedication. It's dedicated to all the blue elephants. And my wife had a stuffed animal, yay big, an elephant, that sat like this. And we developed a story in our family that was because he was bored. And so whenever you get bored, you want someone to shut up because they've been droning on. You go, blue elephant, blue elephant. So my book was dedicated to all of the people that have made blue elephants. I like to explain that because no one's asked.